Hello everyone, I am the weather. It is October 1st. As you know, recently I did do my winter forecast video. So since we're marching into this El Nino here, I figure I'd rewind the clock a little bit and we're going to take a look at what the month of October could look like for us across the United States. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell icon so you do not miss a future upload. And we're just going to go ahead and get right into the video here. Alright, so to start off the video here, we're going to be taking a look at what our average high temperatures typically look like here for the month. Alright, so to start off here, we're going to be taking a look at what the average high temperatures look like for the month of October. And of course, these couple maps I'm going to show you are from the Weather Channel. Of course, you can go check it out on their website. So I'm going to kind of format this video in the way I did with my winter video, where I'm going to be giving like a few maps, like a few background maps, and I'm going to be showing you historically what has happened in the month of October during an El Nino. And then, of course, I will show my self-made maps that I predict that what will happen through the month of October. So typically, what does the month of October look like? Well, for the Southwest and the Gulf Coast, typically we have high temperatures in the 80s, maybe some desert areas approaching 90s, 70s even for like the Tennessee Valley, the Southeast, the South Central, and then getting it up into like the Mid-Atlantic, the Ohio Valley, the Central Northern Plains, high temperatures usually in the 60s, and then the New England and the Northern Plains and like in the Rocky Mountains, maybe in the 40s up there, but generally the Northern Plains and the New England high temperatures are typically in the 50s for the month of October. What about low temperatures? Well, even down into the Gulf Coast, it gets into the 60s and even 50s in some spots, right? A place like Miami is still typically in the 70s at night, of course, because you got the still typically warm water surrounding Florida, keeping your temperatures, especially by the coastal areas, a little bit warmer at night. But a good chunk of the country, especially like even from the panhandle of Texas all the way up to the coastal mid-Atlantic, temperatures in the 40s at night in October, so it starts getting pretty cold. The Rocky Mountains, some of those higher elevations here could even get to the 20s, which is practically like winter for some of us, if not worse than someone's typical winter. So the mountainous areas definitely do make a difference there. But even in the northern plains and up into the Northeast and New England, low temperatures in the 30s, typically speaking, for the month of October. All right, so this is the Weather Company's Weather Channel's temperature outlook for the month of October here. And as you can see, definitely looking like warmer than average here, especially in the central and like the central plains, southern plains, and the northern plains. All right, well above average, in fact, is what they're calling for, especially, of course, in the northern tier. And then outside of that, even the West Coast, aside from areas like San Francisco and the state of Nevada, maybe some slightly cooler air as well as to the southeast and Miami. And there is an explanation for why they are actually highlighting this for their temperature outlook, and we'll take a look at it in just a second. If we take a look at the Northeast and even the Mid-Atlantic and the Southeast, still looking like above average temperatures as well. So you might be thinking, well, why is it going to be like this? Well, starting off with the early October pattern, because as you know, there is just this ridge of high pressure parked over the Tennessee Valley right now, and that's essentially allowing this dome of heat to build up in the central U.S. and in the eastern United States. So that's what led to this their temperature outlook here of those really warm temperatures. And the early October pattern is calling for troughing in the west, which is why you saw like California and Nevada, and some slightly cooler air for the month of October. Now, again, this isn't for the entire month, as you can see, early October. So only for the early part of the month, but still, this could be dominant for the first 10 plus days of the month, and it could contribute significantly to what the overall month could end up looking like. There could still be some troughing, maybe a little bit offshore, and that northeast wind, because if you've been reading about like all this coastal flooding events that have been happening on the East Coast, it's because of this high pressure that's parked here and the lingering low pressure that's been sitting there for days offshore, allowing that funnel of wind to kind of go down the East Coast and prevent coastal floodings on some of the shorelines that are more prone to that northeast wind. And that's also keeping those areas slightly cooler. So I think that's what potentially led them to their forecast to maybe have Florida a little bit cooler than average compared to normal. Could still be hot, but probably going to be cooler compared to average. All right, so now we're going to take a look here at our temperature outlook that is provided by the Climate Prediction Center that was actually just issued yesterday for the month of October. You can see the northern tier of the United States, as well as you can kind of see in Alaska here. Warmer than average temperatures are expected. Now, the deeper colors do not mean that we're going to be further above average. It just means that we have a higher confidence that they will be above normal to some capacity. So, for example, Minneapolis could end up being like only a degree above average, whereas down in maybe Houston, it could be 5 degrees above average. But up here in the northern tier, there's a higher chance of that, and that's what these colors are suggesting. So that's kind of the guidelines that they follow. And you can see by the probability, and they're keyed down here. So the best chance for that is going to be in the northern half of the United States. The southeast is the only place with equal chances. I just feel like the Climate Prediction Center is always kind of above average trending in their forecast. If that makes sense. A little bit more. I guess they're a little bit more biased in that way. Because I swear I've never seen one monthly outlook, at least in a while, where I've seen like cooler than average, and in like blue shading. Or if there is, it's like there's like one little shade of blue somewhere. So I don't really ever see that much because usually, I mean, had been times where the most of the United States is like warm or cool, but typically there's always going to be some areas typically that are different. So the best chance to see cooler air would be in the southeast, anywhere from like Alabama to the Carolinas and on south into Florida. But in general, they're calling for an above average temperature outlook for Alaska and for the northern tier of the United States. How about the precipitation outlook? Well, they've actually switched this up recently because they had a map from September 21st that looked a little bit different, so they kind of updated it to from yesterday. You can see drier conditions from the southeast up the east coast into New England, all right, and maybe again for like the Rocky or for the Rocky Mountain regions, and as well as say areas in Texas and including the Panhandle, eastern New Mexico, and Alaska, do have the best chances to see above average precipitation, with that extending up into the northern plains. But the Pacific coast, especially around like coastal Washington to Oregon, could see below average precipitation, and that's because you can kind of see maybe some ridging that we're going to continue to see to allow that warmth and dry air for these regions, while maybe a little bit more troughing in this direction. So depending on how the month goes, of course, we know the early October pattern will be dominated by the ridge, kind of going like this. So it's going to keep a lot of these places warm and dry. But again, as I mentioned earlier, that's not the outlook for the whole month. That's just going to be the early October pattern here, and things could certainly change. All right, let's take a look now at historically what has happened. These are pretty much the same years that I used in my winter video, except now we're going to take a look at October. So in October, during all these years you see at the top of your screen, there were El Niños of similar strength to this one. That's the key, because weak El Niños and strong El Niños can be pretty different. So you can't just go at any month that had an El Niño and be like, okay, I'm going to add it. It's not how it works. So these are all months with typically around moderate El Niños, right? Similar strength to what we have now. And historically, they have provided places from Texas up to Chicago, right? Texas up to Illinois, with some above average precipitation. This is our precipitation we have to start out with, right? The center of the country tends to get some of that heavier precipitation. And I feel like the Climate Prediction Center was showing that in their outlook as well. Which is good because this area is in the Mississippi River Basin watershed, which is, of course, as you know, seeing some low water levels right now. So, of course, that's a good sign. Hopefully, this October could provide there. One thing this map did agree with on the Climate Prediction Center, Oregon and Washington, again, below average precipitation, kind of like what they were showing. And also the Northeast, right? Not so much the Mid-Atlantic, but more so the interior and northern New England on average, historically, during El Nino months in October have seen below average precipitation, and actually the Southeast as well, which I actually found kind of interesting. Again, not the entire Southeast, just parts of the Carolinas, for example, and also central and southern Florida, typically a little bit above average precipitation. Now temperatures. This one was actually quite shocking to me. Pretty much everywhere, and honestly, there was so much like deep blue color here that I actually had to go ahead. Like I did in my winter video, I had to change the intervals to 5 instead of 3 like they were for the precipitation outlook. So yeah, I did have to change the intervals. But historically speaking, the coldest departures from average had been felt in the Rocky Mountain regions and in the middle of the country, pretty much the northern, central, and southern plains, by as much as 2.5 to 4 degrees Fahrenheit below average for the month of October. But pretty much, for the exception of Again, the Washington and Oregon coastline. With the exception of those locations, historically speaking, pretty much the entire country has fared cooler conditions in the month of October. And you're going to see how this plays into my forecast. Because even though we are stuck in this early October pattern, it could quickly turn around and provide some cooler air for the country. And of course, with that fall front that could potentially be coming through in the next 7 days or so, we'll see how that plays out. But of course, that's another video for another time. But again, even the East, even though the departures aren't as significant, maybe about a degree or a degree and a half below average, October during El Nino has provided us with some cooler air typically for the month of October here. So let's get into my forecast here, starting off with the precipitation anomalies. All right. So I do believe that again, like history has provided us, I do believe that slightly below average precipitation. I would even go so far as to extend this a little bit further south and to the east, but northern New England and the Northeast could see some slightly below average precipitation, as well as in the northern plains and the Washington and Oregon coastline, maybe going even a little bit further inland than that. Again, all depends on how the jet stream kind of interacts with these places here, because there could be some ridging at times here, and there could be some troughing here, and then some ridging here. So all depends on where that jet stream goes. And for the early part of October, again, a lot of ridging is going to be taking place over the central and eastern United States. Now, precipitation, I do believe slightly below or slightly above, average. Places like the Southwest, maybe even Arizona, New Mexico, through Texas, up into the Mid-Atlantic, right? Even extending east into places like Washington, D.C., Louisville, Kentucky. But I do think, again, because history has provided us with this evidence, I do believe that there's a greater chance, at least, that we could see some above average precipitation, especially in places like the Panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma, Oklahoma City, as well as places like Kansas City and St. Louis, Missouri. All right, so that is your precipitation outlook. All right, let's go ahead and finish up here. We're going to take a look at the temperature outlook. And you can see, again, kind of like the Climate Prediction Center was saying, I do believe the best chance to have below average temperatures will be in the southeastern United States. I do believe conditions could fare a little bit cooler, especially if we continue that northeast wind. I would maybe even confine this a little bit closer to the coast. Right? But because we have that funnel of the wind, again, from that lingering low pressure system here, building high pressure here, and I do believe that wind will provide us with some slightly cooler air, especially for the southeast coasts. Right? And there's going to be a lot of ridging, especially in the, again, with that jet stream. I'm saying ridging and troughing a lot in this video because it matters. So I do believe that we're going to have these really warm areas. There's going to be higher confidence. So we're going to see warmer temperatures, especially over the north and central United States. And this could even extend up into New England as well. Could see some slightly above average temperatures at times, but could turn around potentially here later in the month. And again, even for the West Coast, I think the same thing could be said as well. And of course, I do believe this could also turn around later in the month when we have, those, or we're already even starting to see them now, these atmospheric rivers, these bomb cyclones that are starting to run into the coast. All right, so that's why I kind of put the West Coast in like this yellow area where it's like only slightly above average. Right, and I also extend down to the southern plains, and again, as I said earlier, up into the Northeast and New England. So I just wanted to thank you guys so much for watching. This was indeed a very fun video to make, just like the winter forecast video. Of course, I can't wait to do future, monthly predictions. Of course, we got November and December coming up as well, and looking forward to do some more winter forecast videos as well. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video, and I am the Weather Dude signing off until next time.